Hello, my name is Barbara Porter, and I am the owner of True Perceptions, where I have been using the integrative processing technique, or IPT, that was taught to me through the Institute of Healing Arts of Utah. I graduated from this program in 2009 and opened my private practice, True Perceptions, in order to help individuals and families in this emotional healing process. The integrative processing technique, or IPT as we call it, is actually a 4-step process that includes many different types of modalities that are used in combination with one another to help individuals and families healing from past traumas or stresses, false belief systems, toxic emotions and patterns, all the things that make us feel stuck in our old behaviors and programs that are stored in our subconscious mind. In 2011, I became a trainer for the Institute of Healing Arts Arizona Distance Group, where I have trained several classes in being able to learn and apply these IPT techniques. I have thoroughly enjoyed the time that I have spent with clients and students learning this valuable work. It has changed my life completely and the lives of those that I have worked with. Throughout these years, I've shared a PowerPoint that I created with new clients as well as with students or in previews just to help educate the public about these emotional health principles. And as I've shared this PowerPoint through the years, I've had many people ask for a copy of this. And now that it is time for me to close my practice, I'm figuring that I need to find a way to share it now if I'm ever going to share it. So I've been motivated to figure out a way so that I can have it here on this website for you to benefit from as a way to thank each of you for your great support through the years, and in hopes that it can benefit you or those you love by watching it. So to start, we want to start with the subconscious. The subconscious has a permanent memory of everything we've experienced in our life, the way we perceive it through each of our senses. And it also stores every perception or belief that's been created based on those experiences and the behaviors that have developed as a result. So with each experience, there are emotions that are part of it. There's physiological responses in the body. There's perceptions and beliefs and behaviors that are all part of each experience. And just as an example, this is an experience, a positive experience from my life when I was young. The experience was I loved it when my grandma would read to me. And this happened to be the story that I loved the most. And with this experience or memory, the emotions that I felt were feelings of love, comfort, peace, and joy. The responses in my body were my heart rate was calm and at rest. It was easy to think clearly and perform in healthy, functional ways because of feeling all those good feelings. Along with it were beliefs that were created, a belief that I'm safe, that I'm loved, that I can trust, that I'm important enough for grandma to read to me. And then the behaviors are you remember it in a positive way. You seek and revisit the experience, like every time you go to grandma's and you want her to read you the book. You honor the memory and relive and share the experience, which is what I did. I bought one of these little books for each of my children to have to read to my grandchildren because it had had such a positive experience in my life. The same thing happens with negative experiences. With each experience that might be a little bit more traumatic, like the one visually pictured here, there's completely different emotions that are part of it. Feelings of panic, shock, fear, and terror. That we're going into that fight or flight response where there's physiological changes in the body where our heart rate increases. We may have pain if we were attacked and have body memories that are stored. It might be difficult to think clearly because we're just in shock and survival mode. And we might create beliefs like, I'm not safe, I'm going to die, I'm weak, I'm powerless, or even a belief that I can't trust. If this had been a dog that we had had a positive experience with earlier, and then it felt like it was something that we couldn't really trust, that we thought maybe was safe to trust. And then the behaviors are those responses from the fight or flight. We're either frozen in that shock and trauma and waiting to be rescued, or we might fight back and use anger and intimidation to protect ourselves whenever we feel vulnerable. Or we might go to the flight response where we run away, hide, isolate, try and be invisible. We find a pattern for survival in this experience. And then what happens is it creates a painful coping cycle, a place where this whole memory is stored in the subconscious. And anytime any of this memory gets triggered, it could be seeing a dog, it could be hearing one bark. It might have nothing to do with a dog. It might just have to do with anytime you're feeling panicked or fearful or shocked in some way. Or it could be anytime you feel like you're powerless or not safe. Any aspect of this cycle that might be getting triggered from other things in life can bring up these similar responses where we go back into this painful way of coping, where we're either fighting back or running away or whatever we chose to do in that moment. So it's kind of like an iceberg where the top 10% above the waterline represents our conscious mind or our brain. And the 90% below represents our subconscious mind or the heart. And so, let's go back just a minute. So when we're using this conscious part of our mind to make decisions, to set goals, to try and make forward progress, we can see that there's a whole lot more connected to it below the waterline that's attached to it. And the top part isn't going anywhere without the bottom part. And so sometimes we can self-sabotage with everything that's in that subconscious area that we don't know is working against us, against our conscious mind as we're trying to move forward. We can also compare the subconscious to a computer, because once a computer has been programmed, then there are automatic responses based on the programming. And so if we're wanting to make a change, we've got to go back into that old programming in order for change to happen. So when there's that conflict with what's the old programming, it can feel like there's constantly something that's more powerful than our own willpower that keeps us from what we desire. Pain from the past and unresolved anger and emotions held in the heart can contribute to the problems in present time. We also talk about the vibrational frequency of emotions, because emotions carry energy. If you've ever experienced depression or hopelessness or any of these really heavy emotions, you know, sometimes you don't even want to get out of bed, they're so heavy. But feelings like love, joy, and peace, those are higher frequencies. They vibrate at a higher rate in the body. They feel lighter in the body. David R. Hawkins wrote a book called Power versus Force. And in this book, he has a calibration chart of emotions that range from 0 to 1,000. And shame, you can see, is the lowest vibrating emotion on this chart. And then it moves up: guilt at 30, apathy at 50, grief at 75. It moves on up the scale. Courage is 200. That's kind of a key point right there. And it keeps moving on up. Acceptance 350, reason 400, love 500, joy 540, peace 600. Gratitude calibrates at 770, which is one of the highest vibrational emotions. And then enlightenment all the way up to 1,000. And what he said is that all levels of vibration below 200 are destructive of life, meaning it's really difficult to heal physically or emotionally if we're in these lower vibrating frequencies all the time. But anything 200 and above are constructive expressions of power. 200 just being courage. Sometimes we just need courage to try a new way, to seek a new, seek something new and different. Another thing he mentioned in his book about drug addictions, he said that when a drug user experiences a high, it calibrates from 350 to 600 on that scale, which is in that really high range. But drugs themselves calibrate only at 100. So the question is, how does that happen? He said the actual effects of drugs is merely to suppress the lower energy fields, thereby allowing the user to exclusively experience the higher ones. The suppression of the low energy doesn't create the high ones, it merely reveals them. We know that our brain is designed to keep us alive. There's many, many functions of the brain that I have no clue how they work, but we know that it is there to keep us alive. There are a few areas that I have become a little more familiar with, these autonomic responses, these systems in the body that just happen, digestive, respiratory, cardiovascular. We don't even have to think about it. And those just keep happening. Then we have the frontal lobe, which is where we do our logic and reasoning, our problem solving, our moral judgment. This is the thinking part of the brain. And then we have the amygdala, which is our fight or flight response when we're in the survival mode. And so when we are in survival mode, the brain or the ego will find a pattern in order to survive based on what's happening and to keep us safe. When we're in this survival mode, there's a lot of chemical responses going on in the body. Chemicals that slow down digestion or urine production or other things that don't have to be done in the moment of needing survival. All the oxygen and nutrients and blood flow, all of this goes to the arms and legs so that we can run, so that we can fight, we can do what needs to be done. Adrenaline is released to be able to do that. So our body is producing these chemicals so that we can protect ourselves. So when our mind is in panic, fear, or anger, our whole body is with all these responses. And then sometimes we get stuck in protection mode and the body will continue producing stress hormone chemicals. And then over time, the imbalance starts to break down the body itself. So you might experience things like depression, anxiety, difficulty sleeping, low energy, feeling overwhelmed and helpless, difficulty making decisions, health issues or disease, pain or anger, any number of things that might come as a result. If you've heard of parenting with love and logic, this is the principle that they work on as well with this frontal lobe, where when we're disciplining our children and talking with them, if we're keeping them in this thinking part of the brain, they're going to be able to use their own moral judgment in monitoring their behaviors and in making choices that will be healthy for them. When we're yelling at them, they're no longer in this frontal lobe area, they're in the fight or flight, and they're either going to be fighting against you or fighting against you or running away. So just wanting to be able to keep kids in that frontal lobe area, because neither comprehension nor learning can take place in an atmosphere of anxiety. So there's a fine balance that allows for this survival, because we need growth mode and we need protection mode. When we're not safe and there's a lot of fear and stress, we need those stress hormones to be able to get us to a safer place. But then we also need to be able to come out of that protection mode into a safe place again, where healthy hormones are being produced so that we can grow and move forward in positive ways. So what is it that keeps it stuck? It's the emotions that we experience and the beliefs that are formed based on the experiences that we've had that are stored in the subconscious. Or in other words, it's that painful coping cycle that we were talking about earlier. The Heart Math Institute has done some incredible research on the heart. And they have found through this research that the heart has its own independent nervous system. It's a complex system which is referred to as the brain in the heart. And what they have found is that the heart is the very first organ that forms in a fetus as it's growing inside the mother. The heart pumps this blood around the little fetal body, which is what allows the different parts of the body to be fed and to grow. And as the heart puts out this electromagnetic field full of information that goes to all the cells in the body, it goes out into that field or environment. And this electromagnetic heart field is actually what tells the cells where to go and what to form into in that body. So it's the field of information that is resonating with creation. Even in the womb, this electromagnetic field is creating the physical body. As we continue throughout our life, this electromagnetic heart field is what continues to create our world and our reality as we attract these different things into our life. So EKGs have been around for a long time that measure this heart's electrical field. Now they also have magnetocardiograms or MCG that measures this heart's magnetic field. And they have found that the heart puts out this electromagnetic field that's like 12 to 15 feet all around us. And the heartbeat is one way that communication is sent to just about every cell in the body. And the heart is beating 100,000 times a day. So 100,000 times a day, whatever we hold in the heart is being sent to the body. And then the cells in the body obey that heart's communication. And so does the brain. The brain obeys the message sent by the heart, telling it what kind of energy that needs to be sent to the body. If we could see it, it might look something like this. And they said that the heart's magnetic field is nearly 5,000 times stronger than the magnetic field of the brain. So if our brain or conscious mind is thinking something, but our heart or subconscious mind thinks and feels differently, which one wins? The heart always wins. The heart has reasons which reason cannot understand. We may not be able to explain why we do what we do or think what we think or feel what we feel, but it's called the logic of the heart. The heart knows why. But this is where we are in a double-minded state, where our heart or subconscious is in conflict with our brain or conscious mind. And if anyone has been through any type of abuse, which I think we all have in some form or another, we create beliefs about ourselves. These could be some of them, or they could be many others, but just abuse where we feel like I'm nothing, I'm not important, whether it be physical, verbal, emotional, sexual, whatever type of abuse, we create these beliefs about ourselves. And then if that magnetic field of the heart is 5,000 times stronger than the brain's, then what's going to manifest in someone's life if this is what they believe? And what experiences will be attracted to them? It's going to be circumstances, relationships, situations that prove to them over and over what they believe about themselves already. You can tell someone a million times how wonderful they are, but they may never be able to believe it if it does not match what they believe in their heart. When the heart is holding on to pain, it cannot respond the way the conscious mind is telling it to, because it's responding out of fear, protection, and need, based on that old programming that at one time kept you safe. So the emotions and beliefs that surround these experiences are what keep us functioning in these patterns. But it's important to realize that at one point, these did keep us safe, and they may have even saved our life. But in present time, they can hinder our ability to move forward in our life and overcome responses and behaviors that we want to change. For instance, if we had an abusive parent and we learned how to be invisible, walk on eggshells, never be around when they're around, it was protection. It kept us alive. It kept us going. But then as we become an adult and we try to move forward in life, try to become something, it's going to be really difficult if we're always hiding and being invisible. So there's lots of ways that we deal with emotions. We build walls and don't let anyone get close. We might stuff it and pretend everything's okay. We might overgive and focus on others so we don't have to look at our own stuff. We might stay busy with distractions. We might always need to be right to stay in control because that's where it feels safe. We might go to perfectionism to overcompensate for not feeling good enough. Or we might just try not to feel it and disconnect from feelings, which all these are ways that we disconnect from feelings. But then there's also the drugs and alcohol, pornography and sex, video games, computer addictions, all kind of things that we do to disconnect. So emotional intelligence is our ability to read and interpret emotional feelings or energy of ourselves or others. So understanding our own, understanding others, understanding what it means. And we do this automatically just by visual cues, the vibrational cues, just walking in a room. We have this ability. But what happens is when we are holding on to a lot of pain or trauma in the heart, it does have a tendency to lower the emotional intelligence, meaning we might perceive an emotion like anger. And we might understand that if someone's angry, it means I'm wrong or bad or not good enough in some way. And then we manage it by coping whatever way we do, withdrawing, disconnecting, fighting back, overgiving, whatever that managing looks like. And then we experience things like depression and anger and self-sabotage. But if we can clear up that pain and trauma that's in the heart and come to the truth, it does increase our emotional intelligence, our ability to see that, okay, someone's angry, but anger is just information telling me that something isn't right. It just means we need to address the issue. We need to look at what's going on there. And then we get to choose our responses. We're not so reactionary. We don't have to use these unhealthy ways of trying to get our needs met. It's kind of like trying to hold a beach ball under the water. If we let that beach ball represent our emotions, our belief systems, our pain and trauma, it's like the energy of the body has to be used to hold it under the surface and keep it under control. But if we're doing this, using our energy in this way, we're not going to be able to really swim freely, participate in a swimming competition, save someone who's drowning, anything else, because our focus has to be right there to keep it all under control. There are wounds of the heart that haven't healed because we haven't taken the opportunity to talk about the feelings around the pain. And even though you can't change the fact that these things happen to you, you can change how you feel about what has happened to you and what you believe it means about you. So in other words, you go back into the computer, do some editing and reprogramming, and create a different way of responding. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life and you will call it fate. And this is from a book called The Body Keeps the Score. It says, until you heal the wounds of your past, you are going to bleed. You can bandage the bleeding with food, with alcohol, with drugs, with work, with cigarettes, with sex, but eventually it will all ooze through and stain your life. You must find the strength to open the wounds, stick your hands inside, pull out the core of the pain that is holding you in your pain, the memories, and make peace with them. So this integrative processing technique, or IPT, is where we take all the things that we've learned, all these patterns and behaviors that have been developed throughout our life, and we're unlearning them. We're dismantling these dysfunctional belief patterns and all those things that are stored there in the subconscious. And we relearn. We come to the truth of who we are, which is what really liberates us and elevates our soul with truth. As we work, we also run into generational inherited family patterns, because we inherit patterns of behavior the same way we inherit physical features through the DNA. And we also have these patterns of behavior modeled to us. We watch our parents, we see how they do it, and we do similar things. We cannot tell what may happen to us in the strange medley of life, but we can decide what happens in us. And that is what really counts in the end. How to take the raw stuff of life and make it a thing of worth and beauty. And a principle that is really important to understand is that your pain is your issue. I used to not think this. I just thought if everyone got their life in order, then I would have no problems. But if I am in pain, it's an issue within me. It may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. Just as if someone came in and vandalized your home, you would not just live in it the way they left it. You would not wait for them to come back and fix it. And even if they did, it wouldn't be the way you wanted it. And you wouldn't just invite people in and say, look, this is what happened to me and I have to live this way the rest of my life. And yet sometimes this is what we do because emotionally we don't know how to clean up this pain and trauma. So if we're in pain, it's our responsibility to look inside and see what's there and what needs healing. It's like the garden of the heart, the one on the left representing an area that has experienced a lot of brokenness, a lot of trauma. And if we are trying to plant something to grow and flourish in this area, it's going to be very challenging. Even if it could get enough sunlight, nutrients, water, and even if it could blossom to its full potential, it's going to be very difficult to appreciate it or enjoy it with all the negativity around it. And so even though we may have wonderful things in our life, it may still be difficult for us to find joy in life. And this may be why. In order to have the true happiness and true peace and the unity of mind and body, we have to do the internal work. We have to pull the weeds. We have to clear away the brokenness and debris, all the false perceptions and belief systems and toxic energy, so that we can create the type of environment like on the right, where there is a sense of peace, of love, of tranquility, of connection, of beauty. And so the question is, what does yours look like? Because you are the one that has control over it. It doesn't matter how much anyone else wants it for you or how much you might want it for someone else. It's an individual work. It's an individual choice, and we are the only ones that can make it. Thank you. I hope that this PowerPoint has been some help to you, and that it can help as you share these principles with those around you. Thank you.